Let's just think about this for a second. In 1914, Europe was, without a doubt, at the absolute peak of its power and influence. We're talking about a century of almost unbroken peace that had built up the most advanced, most prosperous civilization the world had ever seen. So how on earth, in just 4 short years, did it all come crashing down in the most brutal, destructive war in human history?
And, to really get a sense of the sheer scale of this disaster, you just have to look at this quote from the great diplomat George F. Kennan. He called it the seminal catastrophe of the 20th century. Basically, the one event that so many of the other horrors of that century would spring from. And believe me, he was not exaggerating.
The crazy thing is, right before the war, the mood in Europe was electric. It was full of optimism. Every single generation was richer and healthier than the one before it. We've got new technologies popping up everywhere. The telephone, cars, even airplanes. It really felt like progress was just this unstoppable force.
And that gets us to the absolute core question of this whole story. Look, everyone knows about the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, but that wasn't the cause of the war. Not really. It was just the spark. The real question is, why was Europe such a powder keg in the first place, just waiting for a match?
Okay, so the immediate trigger, the match that lit the fuse, was definitely those shots fired in Sarajevo on June 28, 1914. The heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne and his wife were killed. A single assassin in a pretty remote corner of the Balkans pulled the trigger that kicked off a global war.
But of course, it's never that simple, is it? To find the real reasons, the deep down causes, we actually have to rewind the clock. We need to go back about 40 years to the moment a brand new, incredibly powerful empire appeared right in the heart of Europe, Germany.
And the architect of this new Europe, well, his fingerprints are all over it. It was one man, really, Otto von Bismarck. A brilliant, totally ruthless, and unbelievably clever statesman who basically designed the whole diplomatic system that was supposed to keep the peace. Now, Bismarck had built Germany through a few short, decisive wars, his famous iron and blood strategy. But once Germany was united, his job flipped completely. He had to convince the rest of Europe that Germany was a satiated power. He needed everyone to know, hey, we're done. We've got what we want. His new goal was to keep things exactly as they were and avoid another big war at all costs. And what he came up with was this thing we call the Bismarckian system. It was this incredibly complex web of alliances, some of them secret, all overlapping. And the number one goal was to keep Germany's biggest rival, a very bitter and vengeful France, totally isolated so it couldn't find any powerful allies. But here's the catch. The system was so complicated that it really only worked if he was the one running.
So we can pretty much boil his whole system down to 4 main rules. Number 1, keep France alone. Number 2, make sure you're allied with Austria-Hungary to protect your southern border. Number 3, and this was the big one, always, always, always stay friendly with Russia. You do not want a 2-front war. And number 4, whatever you do, do not pick a fight with Great Britain and its navy. And you know what? For nearly 20 years, this whole delicate balancing act actually worked.
Well, that entire system, that whole house of cards, really depended on the genius of that one man. And when a new, young, and frankly pretty erratic monarch came to power, the whole thing started to wobble. Enter Kaiser Wilhelm II. And this slide just lays out the difference so perfectly. You're talking about a complete 180. You go from Bismarck's super cautious, keep things as they are style of diplomacy to Kaiser Wilhelm's aggressive new Weltpolitik, or world policy. He wanted Germany to have its place in the sun, to be a global empire, and he didn't want to wait. The careful balance Bismarck built was about to get thrown completely out the window.
So in 1890, it all comes to a head. The Kaiser is just tired of being in the old Chancellor's shadow, so he forces him to resign. He wants to be his own man to set a new course for Germany. And just like that, the master chess player was off the board.
And Bismarck, he saw it coming. After he retired, he made this prediction, and it is just chilling how right he was. The crash he talked about, it came almost exactly 20 years later, with the total collapse of the German Empire he had spent his life building.
So what was the Kaiser's first big move on his own? Well, it was a massive mistake, a catastrophic error. He just allowed the reinsurance treaty with Russia to expire. This was the secret deal that guaranteed Russia's friendship and prevented a 2-front war. He broke the number 1 rule in Bismarck's playbook.
And that single decision, it set off a chain reaction. It completely dismantled Bismarck's system and ended up dividing Europe into 2 rigid, hostile, armed camps. All that diplomatic wiggle room that had kept the peace for decades, gone.
The first domino fell fast. Russia was shocked, felt totally abandoned by Germany, and it immediately went looking for a new partner. And who was available? France. This was the one thing Bismarck worked his entire career to prevent. And almost overnight, his greatest nightmare, Germany caught between France and Russia, was a reality.
Okay, so what was the Kaiser's next mistake? He decided to challenge the one power Bismarck said to leave alone, Great Britain. He started a massive naval arms race, trying to build a fleet that could rival the Royal Navy. Now, this didn't impress Britain, it absolutely terrified them. For an island nation, a new naval challenger was a huge red flag. Their old policy of splendid isolation suddenly looked really dangerous.
So what does a threatened Britain do? It starts looking for friends, and this leads to some shocking new partnerships. First, in 1904, it buries the hatchet with its old rival France in the Entente Cordiale. Then, in 1907, it does the unthinkable and makes a deal with Russia. And with that, the Triple Entente was born.
So here's the bottom line. By 1907, the new battle lines were drawn. On one side, you've got the Triple Alliance, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and let's say, not so reliable Italy. And on the other side, the new Triple Entente, France, Russia, and Great Britain. The whole continent was now officially a tinderbox.
And we got a terrifying preview, a full dress rehearsal for what would happen in 1914 during something called the Bosnian Crisis of 1908.
This was a test run of the new system, and it was scary. Here's what went down. Austria-Hungary decided to formally annex Bosnia, a territory it had been occupying for years. This made the small kingdom of Serbia absolutely furious. They saw Bosnia as theirs. And of course, that meant Serbia's powerful big brother, Russia, was furious too.
Russia started making noise, ready to protest, but then Germany stepped in. It gave its ally, Austria-Hungary, what we now call a blank check, full, unconditional support. Germany basically dared Russia to do something about it, and Russia, which was still weak from a recent war, had no choice but to back down. It was a massive humiliation.
And this is the moment that shows you the dangerous new reality. A local squabble in the Balkans wasn't local anymore. You see how it works now? These alliances weren't safety nets. They were tripwires. Germany's backing of Austria blew a regional dispute into a continent-wide crisis. All the diplomatic safety nets were gone.
Which leaves us with one final pretty chilling question. With Europe locked into two hostile camps, with the old, flexible diplomacy of Bismarck totally dismantled, was the catastrophe that came in 1914 really an accident? Or at that point, was it tragically inevitable? Was it ever a matter of if, or was it simply a matter of when?